Look, I think being in the personal and professional development world for so many years now, I think it's true that over the years, we're assessing our goals, we're creating new ones, we're revisiting, what we're doing in terms of, getting those goals and setting bigger ones. But I guess the question that I ask my clients all the time is, what would it take for you to shift the question that you ask yourself from why don't I have what I want to what will I aim for next? And Brad and I were just having a conversation about this, talking about the reasons why some people seem to get everything that they want and yet other people struggle to get what they want. So, Brad, I know that, you hear clients often, with different concerns and complaints. Are you hearing that, lots of people are tired of feeling like there's not enough and that they want more?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think the first place most people are going to is just having a lack of time and a scarcity of time, and the concept being that, for example, so having someone tell me about all the things they've got to do and how busy they are and they can't get anything done. And I heard this person tell me this a number of times to the point where I got frustrated with them and said, look, if you had actually done one of those things instead of spending the last half an hour over the last 3 days telling me all the things you got done, you would have been moved further towards your goals, right? And I think that scarcity then comes across into other areas, whether it be money and as well. So people have often in that scenario where they're so busy, they're talking about being busy, that they don't actually realize that that's taking up so much time that they could actually do. So effectively what they're saying and what they're working on is they're operating in a place of scarcity, and it's unconscious in that regard, so they want more, but they're very busy. So, they want to be able to attract more clients and the success in their lives, but they're stuck in this scarcity sort of struggle. Have you experienced a similar scenario, Chandell? Do you find people are struggling in the context of scarcity around time or money?
Look, I think that's a really interesting question. And my answer to you is I see both all the time. And often they're intertwined in ways that people can't see it. And I'm sure you see that too. I often find that the lack of definition on the outcomes that we want and the goals that we're actually working towards will be a main contributor to why people feel so busy being busy. And then they find that they've got scarcity in their abundance, whether it be with money or team that they need, or, the kind of quality in their relationships, or the ability to have the body and the fitness that they want. Doesn't matter the context, but they often have a lack of outcome simply because they haven't been clear about what the definition of the outcome is, and therefore struggle to find what's the thing that I need to do in the next 15 minutes, in the next hour, in the next week, in the next month to actually progress further, and knowing which activities to kill off the to-do list that may not actually get them to that goal. And so, it makes me think about a salon owner that I was working with last year. When we first met, she had a lot of goals, a lot of things going right, but also a lot of things getting in the way of her getting to the next level. And, by the definition of that outcome, clearly, not only did she manage to have her team perform in the way that she needed to, finding that freedom of time that she wanted to work on her business and also, work on her life, but she actually set a goal to achieve buying her ideal dream home. Not only did she achieve it, but she did it instead of 12 months, she did it in 11 months to the day of the goal that she set. So I think sometimes there's that lack of clarity, and I know you have some strategies around this as well, Brad. Like, how do you help people get over that feeling that they're too busy to actually deal with this now, and so they keep waiting and waiting for a better time?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of business owners, they are actually the business owner themselves is in the way of the business being successful. One of the things I like thinking and projecting about a business is the only thing that holds the business back is the business owner, and that's something you can change. So and so it's about sort of seeing what's your purpose, what's your end result, what's your legacy. And not a task that I give clients, but I know other coaches do, where they have the client write their eulogy, and they talk about what their life's going to be and all those sort of things. And it's a nice little task to do, not something that I've done, but a nice little task I know people do. But even that, some people don't even do that as a scenario as well. So
You imagine that here lies such and such. We don't have a eulogy because they never got around to writing it. Good intentions, but never got there.
Yeah, and again, another client I had where he was just being very frustrated by the lumpiness of his business and the scarcity he had in his margins and all these sort of things. And then he'd come along and he'd do a deal and he'd make a lot of money on this deal. And I actually had him work out what his productive hourly rate was when he was being in his flow, working on what he should be doing, what he actually earned. And when he calculated the amount of hours he'd worked on this deal, it worked out that his productive hourly rate was $11,000. Okay. And I said to him, so when you're deleting spam from your inbox, just realize that you're charging yourself $11,000 an hour to delete spam. That was a bit of a wake up call for him.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah. Another client I had really worked in this space of going through, worked in sales, wanted to start his own coaching business, set a goal to finish his job and start his coaching business. 2 weeks later, he was doing that and he did really, really well. He hit $5,000 a month pretty consistently. And he come back and he said, I've got some blockages. I can't seem to break this 5,000. What can I do? I work with him. We made some shift and change. He did the $10,000 consistently. And he come back again and said, Brad, I can't break the $10,000. Every time I come and do coaching with you, my income doubles. Let's do it again. I said, all right, fine. So we got him from 10,000 to 50,000, from 50,000 to 100,000. And we managed to get not just his business in check, but we got all the other areas of his life taken care of. Part of his resistance was going through a breakdown of his relationship. He had a child, and the mother of that child, the relationship broke up. So his family values are working well. He's got a great relationship with the mother of his child. He's got a great relationship with his child. He's got a new partner, engaged. He's got a business that's successful, and he's in that flow. And he's been able to do that by really looking not backwards, but looking forwards and looking at other people that are being successful and realizing if they can do it, he can do it, not being envy of it, not having a place of scarcity. And he's worked really well in that place. And he's a phenomenal coach doing very well in his particular niche, constantly $100,000 a month, because he changed that scarcity of time, how much time he's spending on his phone doing Facebook, which is not actually making him money, how much time he was spending on, calculating and trying to avoid paying GST on things, all that sort of stuff that he was doing. So he went from a place of scarcity and envy to abundance, and that made a real big difference in him. Have you got clients that you've never experienced that scenario where they've all of a sudden they realize that they've got to stop looking backwards and start going forwards?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, my take on that is that, often people have this story, or they have limitations in terms of the way that they actually move towards things. Like you said, they're looking backwards and they're, feeling sorry for themselves about all the things that they've tried and it hasn't worked out, or, they're comparing themselves to people around them that may not be having the kind of transformations that they would like to see happening. And so, I was working with this lady who was actually in one of our neurochange programs. And, when she first came to me, she had all these limitations, lots of, I've tried all of this and it doesn't work. And, how come those people over there, they seem so lucky and stuff happens for them? I'm not lucky. Nothing works out for me the way that I want it to, etc. And so real kind of, if you like, a victim mentality on this, and lots of blockers with the itty bitty shitty committee telling her why she couldn't succeed. And so as we started to identify the focus and where she was actually putting her focus, not only did we see that it was past and comparative, but she also identified that a lot of those limitations came from her own projections of self. And, we often say that when we point the finger out there and make a judgment, there are 3 fingers pointing right back at us. And so the realization of that, and actually using some of these simple processes to fire the itty bitty shitty committee quickly and easily, not only did she let go of those beliefs, but she also maintained the team that she had within the business that she works within, and increased her income by 50K just from having the courage to be able to honor the goals and the attributes and the things that she was putting in place, really, selling her worth and her value to her employer, and managed to get that pay increase. And I think that, a lot of people sometimes think that these kinds of transformations can only be resolved in one-on-one experiences where you've actually got, the full attention of a coach really deep diving into, what they're thinking about. And actually this client had that reservation. She really wasn't sure whether or not the whole idea about being in the neurochange program, being in, with a small group of participants. And so I want to talk about the powerful change and the extra benefits that actually happens when we see this process taught in a group, Brad.
Yeah. Look, one-on-one's great, but with one-on-one, you've got 2 heads thinking about a problem. One of them with tools and techniques, other one with a problem, but still only 2 heads. And it's great. You get some great shifts and results in one-on-one. And I've done many one-on-one sessions with many, many clients. I've also done a lot of group processes, and the group process I've done has generally been intense over a 2-day period of time. And it's great because you get to go through a massive amount of change in those 2 days. And there's something that takes place when you turn up just to an event. Something takes place when you're actually articulating your goals or your values, or when you're struggling with a concept, an idea, and there's someone else in the room who's also struggling. You realize it's just not you. It's just how you're interpreting things and going through that. So having a group of people and that accountability, having to show up and talk about what you're going to be doing is really good. The power of actually there's something that takes place. I don't know how to explain it, but there's something that takes place when you get a whole bunch of people setting their own goal for the same time in the future. The level of support and energy that's around that. Often it's a scenario where people are talking about how they feel about something, like the imposter syndrome. And the person goes, "Oh, imposter syndrome. I didn't get that. That's what I feel. I thought I was the only one that had this problem. I thought I'm not alone in this scenario. That's how you feel it as well." It's like all of a sudden it's like this realization that the battle that's going on in here is happening with everybody, and the collective of how that can go through and support in being able to make those sort of changes. So seeing the process, and the other great thing about it, this is an interesting one, right? Because there's so much of our limiting beliefs, like you mentioned, it won't work for my business, it won't work for me, you don't understand my problem's too big than everybody else's. Yeah, there's something that takes place when you watch a process being done with somebody and you can physically see them shift and change. It changes your belief that you can do it as well. And it's very hard to get that in a one-on-one because the person has got no feedback, or their convincer of the process or their investment in doing it is in their head. But when you see someone make a shift and a change, it's phenomenal. I was working in the last neuro change group. I went through, the lady there who had post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma. And there was an event that took place, very traumatic event that took place, which I didn't know about at the time. And she dealt with it through this process. And afterwards, she articulated, she talked about how this shift and change had taken place. And she no longer had any post-traumatic stress disorder on this event. The trauma was gone. And everybody around her was like going, "Wow, she looks different." She's like, "All my friends are saying, 'Who are you? What did you do?' I made this huge shift and change, So I've got so many people coming to see you, Brad, because this is phenomenal, right?" But it was watching her go through that change that allowed other people to be also vulnerable to do the process as well, because they believed in it. They'd seen that shift and take place. And that's really, really important. And last but not least, the wonderful thing about being in the group is that strong environment of positive influence. Yeah. So you've got other people there to support you along the way, as opposed to the tall poppy syndrome dragging you back down, or our friends and family doing the right thing by us by telling us to pull our head in and not stick our head above the sand, as opposed to a group of people that are all striving for their own success and the success of others. So Sundell, why? Let's talk about why we're so keen to sort of get people along into this environment, because we just, it's been such a big shift and change over the years. Why do you think it's so important to get people in this program?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I have had many discussions around transformations and those stories and what's actually possible. And so I think that the last couple of years, we've got, all the residue from the pandemic and the impacts that that's had on, particularly some industries have been hit harder than others. There's a lot of economic destabilization, a lot of fear that's coming up because of, the fear mongering that's going on in the media about, what to expect, etc. And I think more than ever is an important time for us to recognize that there is a new normal, and the people who are putting their focus on how they can show up ready for that new normal and to invest in themselves and not have those projections that potentially cost them a lot of impacts, definitely is the time. And look, you and I both share the passion around the fact that when people make these changes, when they know that they can step in and be who they want to be, do the things that they know they want to be able to do in order to have the things that they want to have, that has, multiple transformations, not just for the individual themselves, regardless of the context, but it has what I call a domino effect. And so, we've got this real passion behind this concept of intergenerational mental health, because when I show up better than the people around me, whether it be colleagues, family, friends, community, then they get the benefit of that. And so it just has this wonderful effect where people start to create those amazing transformations, and people around them say things like, "My gosh, you look different. You seem so much happier. Wow, look at you go." And, that's the stuff that we really want to see for our clients.
Yeah. Did you have a facelift? No, no. I,
Yes.
I
I
forget.
love that. And of course, my personal favorite when our clients ring us and they say, Chandell, Brad, I went through this situation and I was totally fine. Like I was calm, collect, and I didn't even realize until after it happened that the thing happened. And I looked back and I went, oh my God, like she would have never been able to deal with that, or he would have never been able to deal with that. And so I think now more than ever, there's an urgency around the fact that more people need to have access to these tools, which is why we've, built these programs the way that we have to make it more accessible. And so, I guess the people in our audience, if they're watching this and you feel like this is a taste of the kind of change and transformation, that you'd like to see in your life, we're going to pop a link here. And I really encourage you to jump on and have a complimentary 30-minute discovery with one of our coaches or myself or Brad and find out what's really holding you back, because it's probably not the thing that you've been staring at trying to change. It's probably something deeply unconscious. And even though you don't realize it, it could be very easily transformed and changed. So, I really want to encourage everybody to jump in on that. Brad, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to have a call, and we can sort of certainly find out how and on what is possible for you, and you can start thinking about what's possible for 2023 as opposed to what's impossible. And really, let's get cracking.